So let's take a deep breath and let it go. Let's do that together again. Breathe in. Let it go. Together, one more. Breathe in. And let it go. And so good morning again. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Reverend Elisha Christopher. I am the spiritual director and the senior minister of the Center for Spiritual Living here in Santa Cruz. I do use they, them pronouns. My ancestors come to us from all over the world. We know the ones that immigrated to this country came here from Ireland, Scotland, Austria, and Holland. I do have some ancestors native to the Americas as well. Well, 2025 is gone. Bless it, release it, and I do want to say much gratitude to Chaplain Wendy, to Chaplain Cheryl, and to Gitanjali, who spoke to you last month, who stood in while I was gone, and just much, much, much love and gratitude to them for all that you brought over the course of last month. So it's a new year. And we've got a whole new theme. For those of you who may or may not know, across the Centers for Spiritual Living, we do use unified themes. We call them our global themes. And there's a group of individuals, ministers, practitioners, and other volunteers from around our global movement who get together for about a year in advance and do a lot of meditating and visioning and synthesizing and bringing together what comes through that visioning, and that informs what our direction will be for the movement, for the whole of the organization for the coming year. And so 2026, our theme of the year is Open at the Top. And that actually comes from a phrase from the founder of the philosophy of science of mind that we teach here, from Ernest Holmes. And Ernest Holmes was someone who was alive in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and was informed by the work of Emerson and the other transcendentalists. He was part of the emergent New Thought movement, which was really beginning at that time, which has some history in Christian Science and other sort of philosophies like that really started with this idea that the mind has power over the body to heal any physical condition. That's really the foundation of the New Thought movement. And then as various teachers came along and as different organizations were formed and as the philosophy emerged, that idea that the mind has power over the body evolved into this idea that the mind has power over reality. That it is the mind that is choosing. It is the mind that is creating. And by mind, we mean that thing that's happening inside of each one of our heads, but we also mean that great consciousness that is activating, creating, participating, and evolving in absolutely everything. And so Ernest Holmes comes along, founds this organization called Religious Science, or Science of Mind, or Centers for Spiritual Living, as it's now known. And one of the things he said towards the end of his life is, I've laid out this wonderful philosophy. I do hope that people will continue to practice it and teach it, but never forget that this philosophy is to be left open at the top. Do you get that? That means that the philosophy is never complete. That it's not like someone came along and gave us the final message and now we're to practice their teachings. He said, here are a number of great ideas. Practice them, test them, see if they work, but continue to study, continue to learn, continue to take on new philosophies, new ideas as the human consciousness emerges, as we learn more about the nature of the universe. Let that inform your spirituality. Let that inform your identity. And so the whole idea is that the philosophy itself is to be left open at the top. It's meant to continuously evolve. Never stagnate. Continue to evolve. Continue to grow. And so it's very exciting to me as one of the people who led the visioning process for the global themes, that this was the conclusion we came to for 2026, that this year is about us continuing to practice and remember and expand this idea that we are open at the top. And it means that we are to be open to new ideas and to new ways of doing things. And as we make that our theme for this year, it's going to be an invitation to all of us to really think about what it would mean if we were to live our lives as if each one of us were open at the top. And maybe think about Where are the areas in your thinking, in your life, in the way that you're looking at the world, in the way that you're experiencing things, where maybe due to conditioning, due to circumstances in the world, due to whatever beliefs have been implanted on us, perhaps we've put a little lid on what we think is possible. Have you ever done that? Oh, no. Okay, good. But I'm sure each one of us have areas of our life or areas of our growth or areas of what we believe we can have or what can happen that we've put a lid on and say, this is the cap of my belief. This is the cap of what I think I can experience or what I can earn or the kind of love I can have or the kind of healing that the world is available for. And my invitation for us this year is to be to blow the lid off of what we think is possible. Right? And let that be a core aspect of what it is that we're continuing to revisit and say, where are we limiting God? Where are we limiting the universe? Where are we limiting ourselves? And find ways of taking that ceiling off and looking up into a greater horizon. Because I think that for better or for worse, we here on planet Earth, and that's all of us at least, we are at a remarkable choosing point. You know, all of the tipping points that have been predicted for the last decades or years or however long people have been talking about things are going to change someday, all of the tipping points are coming together. And whether it's the political environment, the ecological environment, all the various environments in which we live. There are all sorts of things that are coming together that are reaching a crux point. And I believe that each one of us individually, we as a community, and we as a global family are at a great choosing point. And that choosing is going to require us to look beyond what we think is possible. It's going to require us to look beyond the circumstances that we are in and remind ourselves that precedent, that history, that what's happening right now does not limit where we can go. It does not limit what is possible. We can look backwards to inform ourselves and to learn what has happened, to be prepared, to be knowledgeable of the cycles that are at work, but we get to choose how those things move forward, how they evolve, how they change in trajectory. I often talk, sometimes one of my favorite books is written by Starhawk. It's The Fifth Sacred Thing. And one of the things she mentions in that book, one of the characters is getting a lesson in how life works. And they talk about there's always two worlds in front of us. And in the book, she calls them El Mundo Bueno and El Mundo Mal. There's a good world and a bad world. And they're each available in every moment, depending on what we choose, depending on what we're willing to receive, depending on what we're willing to step into. And so at every moment, there's a crux point, there's a choice point that's happening, and do I choose to step into the good world, or do I choose to step into the bad world? And really, we're doing that every single day. We're doing that every single moment. Really, as thoughts move through your mind, they're constantly moving through these branching dendritic pathways where electricity is moving across the surface of your brain. Every time you make a choice, there's a direction that's being chosen. And every time we choose a direction, that pathway, whether it's in our mind or in our life, gets carved in a little bit deeper. It becomes a little bit easier to move that way again next time. And so I want to invite us to start looking at what's happening in our world. Start looking at what's happening in our lives and figure out how we can be in anticipation and in expectancy and joyously in the creative juice of what's possible, not just stuck in what's taking place right now. Because there's a whole lot of stuff taking place right now that my rational mind, that my fear body, that my survival self does not understand how we're going to get out of this. Right? And the fear brain, the survival self, probably in many of you, sees a lot of what's happening and wants to say that the bad world is continuing to emerge more and more and more. And it's up to us to do something with that, to be the place where a trajectory shift can happen. to be the space where a different choice can take place. Because our work constantly is to stay in alignment with a higher truth that might be available to our eyes or to our feeling body in any moment. And in this idea of being open at the top, one of the things we're going to be unveiling in the next number of weeks is what came through in our strategic planning and visioning for this community for where our new direction and where we're going. As we've been in a lot of pivoting and shifting in the last year, there's a new direction coming. And one of the things that came through, for years here at CSL Santa Cruz, we've been using our greater organization's mission, purpose, and vision as our guiding light. And we've called forth our specific vision and mission for this community, who we are to be. And one of the things that came through is that our mission here, the thing that we're doing, the thing that we are about, the thing that we're working on all the time, is to reveal and nurture our sacred existence. To reveal and nurture the truth that each one of us is part of something sacred. That's why every Sunday when we start this service, we acknowledge the land, we acknowledge the spirits and the ancestors who dwelt here before us. We acknowledge that the earth is a living thing. That when we come into this space, the music, the message, the prayer, all of it is to remind us that our life is sacred, that life is sacred. And I've said this 1,000 times probably, but I really believe that this awareness, this real awakened awareness alive within us, if it is embodied, if it is awakened, that life itself is sacred, that the planet is sacred, that every human life is sacred, that all animal life is sacred, that plant life is sacred, that mineral life is sacred. Y'all, that would change how we interact with everyone and everything, and all of the systems that humanity has built would be different if we operated from a place where we saw the sacred in everything. Right? And it's from that place that we can open our hearts and minds to see things we could never see before. It's only through the eyes of God that we can see the magic and the divinity in everyone and everything. And I'm pretty sure that much of the desire to take over other countries for their oil, or to wage wars, or to kill whole nations of people so that we can get resources or land or protect this or that, does not come from an awareness of the sacred. It comes from a complete disconnect from that truth. And that when we're disconnected from that truth, we can otherize anyone or anything. But when we open our minds to the idea that there's only one of us here, and that one is God, that one is consciousness, that one is life itself, and that one is sacred, when we take that into account, that brings so much newness, so much vision, so much possibility into the path in front of us. And I say this all the time again, but I do believe that everything necessary for our awakening is being handed to us in every moment. And oftentimes when we ask to awaken, when we want to be more, the universe keeps giving us the opportunity to grow in that direction, the conditions that are going to push us towards that evolution. And we can either ignore it and the universe will get louder, or we can listen and make some changes. So what happens when we notice that the conditions keep getting louder and louder and louder, that the human condition is getting louder and louder and louder, that the war, that the discord, that the fascism, that the breakdown, that all of it is getting louder and louder and louder, it's a signal to the universe, folks, that we've not been listening. The conditions keep rising up until they get powerful enough to make us move. And I'm convinced that the conditions that are rising up in the world are perhaps what is exactly necessary to wake each one of us up to the urgency of the moment, so that we make the changes that we need to make, so that the story can change. And much of our spiritual work is to get in tune with that deep down, dark, quiet stuff inside of us that maybe we're not wanting to look at. Because I know that consciousness is creating everything. And there's the consciousness that is creating for each one of us in our individual lives. And then there's the collective consciousness which is creating on everyone's behalf. And Carl Jung says the greatest work you can ever do in your entire life is to heal your piece of the collective unconscious. Because if you see all the war and all the division and all the hatred and all the greed out there, guess what, friends? Some seeds of it exist in you. And some seeds of it exist in me. And I heard another quote recently from a book I'm reading where Carl Jung also says that the unconscious will run your life, and until you change it, you will call it fate. That the unconscious runs your life, and until you make it known, until you change it, until you acknowledge it, you will call it fate. The collective unconscious is ruling the world. It's creating everything. And it's made up of little drops of each one of our thinking. So that's why it's so important for us to get right with ourselves, to get in alignment with ourselves, to use the conditions of the world as a mirror that's shining something back at us and saying, where am I perpetuating this? Where am I complacent to this? Where am I ignoring this? Where am I activating this? Because somehow there's seeds of this terrible web of chaos out there that live in each one of us. And until we're willing to acknowledge it, to say yes to it, to embrace it, to change it, to heal it, we're just going to keep creating the same stuff. You know? Yeah. And so I'm hopeful about 2026. I'm a fierce apocalyptimist. I definitely feel like the end is upon us, like things are breaking down. We'll call it an apocalypse. An apocalypse is just an unveiling, by the way. It's the lifting of the veil and letting what is true to be seen, just so you know, if you want to get into the roots of words. But I'm also incredibly optimistic about what's possible, because I believe that the end of anything is the beginning of something else, that any death is a precursor for a rebirth. And so I can be an apocalyptimist because I can see that many things are coming to an end, that many things are breaking down, that many things are being distorted and destroyed, but at the same time, that informs me that something new is being born, that something else is being created, and something is emerging that we haven't yet thought of or seen yet. You know, we in spirituality, we love the butterfly metaphor. Caterpillar melts down, becomes a butterfly. It's a great one. One of the things I always love about that analogy is this idea of the imaginal cells, right? There's the caterpillar is encoded in the butterfly. It lives in its DNA. It lives in its genes. But the caterpillar has to die. It has to melt. In the cocoon process, when it's all dark and terrible and it's like constrained and all that, those imaginal cells start to reproduce. The new code of the butterfly starts to replicate itself. But in the process, the caterpillar's immune system is trying to kill those cells because it sees it as a threat. Do you get that? The immune system of the old body just tries to destroy the new story as it's beginning to emerge. But over time, the imaginal cells start to replicate faster and faster and faster. They start to link up. They start to grab arms. They start to build the DNA and the blocks of the little helix and all that. And over time, more of the imaginal cells outweigh the old caterpillar's immune system, and there's a tidal shift. But it looks like war before it turns into the proper emergence. Feel it? Yeah, I know. I tell you, we use the same metaphors over and over and over again, and they just keep getting better. You know, but it can give us hope, right? That's where my apocalyptimism comes from, because I've done this caterpillar to butterfly thing myself. I used to be a caterpillar. Look at me. I'm a fabulous butterfly now. And And it's the job of all the butterflies to go to all the caterpillars and be like, I know you're hungry and you just want to consume and consume and consume and consume and consume, but guess what? If you stop it, you can fly. Ooh, yeah. So we're open at the top. Let's learn how to fly this year. Let's learn how to believe in the impossible. Let's learn to see the invisible. Let's learn to be called by the future and not dragged down by the past or the present. You into it? Yes. I feel like 2026 is going to be a good year. You know, and we've talked about the numerology a little bit just for fun. 2025 was the end of a 9-year cycle. Every year, the 4 numbers of the year adds up to a single digit. 2 plus 2 plus 5 equals 9. We just ended a cycle. 2 plus whatever 2 plus 2 plus 6 is a 10, which goes down to 1. So 2026 is a brand new cycle. So maybe what's happened in this last year, and we've got a couple more months of the year of the snake before we move into the year of the horse, about 6 weeks. In that time, we're going to wrap up all the shedding we had to do in the year of the snake that finished up this last 9-year cycle so that we can together step into the year of the horse and giddy up. It's a fire horse, so it's going to be a hot year. It's going to be a strong year. It's going to be a year of moving forward. So you've got about 6 weeks to finish shedding your skin and letting go of all that snaky stuff you don't want to bring with you into 2026 so that we can gallop forward into the new year. Yeah? You feel it? Let's take a breath. Let's go into prayer. Etienne, would you flow with me a little bit? Yeah. Let's breathe in and let it go. And so as we just breathe, as we flow into this moment of now, I invite us, as always, just to take a moment and connect with that breath. For as I breathe, I allow myself to remember that this body is being breathed by something greater than myself. For what I know is that there is one life, one seamless presence, one infinite being that is living and breathing throughout the entirety of the universe. And that it is this one that has been evolving for billions of years, expanding throughout all of time and existence. And yet this one is so intimately and intricately involved in existence that it is right here breathing my body, beating my heart, speaking these words. But that infinite presence is also breathing and living as each person in this room, and indeed as all life on this planet. And so I can claim, know, declare, and remember that indeed there is only one of us here, and that one is what I call God. And what I mean by God is infinite intelligence. What I mean by God is the sacred life that animates all things. What I mean by God is the very power of gravity that is love, that draws all things towards the center of itself. And so let us feel the intimate, the infinite presence. And remember that its greatest impulse is to grow, is to expand, is to become more, but is also to be and experience love. And so let each one of us just open in this moment to remember that that infinite presence is active, awake, and aware in, through, and as us. That as we walk in the world, let us remember that it is divinity that is shining through our eyes. And let us look for the sacred life of the divine absolutely everywhere. Whether it be in the miracle of the raindrops or the laughter and the joy of relationship. The inspiration that we find in this space. Let us remember that all is sacred, that all is holy. And that as we remember that, as we claim our wholeness, as we find God within ourselves, as we look for love and light and truth in each other, we become the place where that something starts to reveal itself. And in that mutual seeing, perhaps we open ourselves to be healed, to be seen, to be loved, to be the healers, to be the seers, to be the lovers of God and each other. And that as we heal ourselves, we take on that great task of healing the collective. Because if there's only one of us here, as we remember who we are, the one awakens. And so let us wake up. Let us light up the world. For in this now moment, we are the imaginal selves. Encoded in each one of us is a world of possibility. Encoded in each one of us is a world of sacredness. Encoded in each one of us is a world of compassion, of equity, of justice, of belonging. And as we awaken it within ourselves, as we know that we can share that love with each other, it spreads. And knowing that the butterfly self of humanity is ready to spread its wings, to rise above the conditions that we have created and build something completely new and beautiful. So we are open at the top. We are open to expansion. We are open to possibility. We are open to healing. We are open to the more of us. And so in gratitude, let us just breathe again. Maybe even bringing a hand to your chest so that you can feel that rising and falling of the breath. In gratitude for the one who is breathing. In gratitude for the presence that beats each of our hearts. And surrender to it. Remember that as easily as we are being breathed, as easily as we are allowing our hearts to be beat within our chests, we can allow ourselves to be lived. We can allow the more to come through us. And so let us surrender. Breathe in. Let go. And let's declare all of this together by saying, and so it is. So it is.